I'm going to ask the panel if they're recalibrating the wow over points, considering league scoring is up so much. Here are the comps. Jordan, in his 37-point per game season, the league was at 109.9. Look at the rest, though. And this is exactly how I remember these guys, by the way. Let's go.
How you gonna do that to
That little mustache on Jordan. I'm just going to leave it there. I'm not going to say anything. It's just a very little mustache.
Pain.
Get to that in a sec. Celtics 117, Raptors 108. Kyrie 27 and 18. The 18 assists, a career high. And here's Irving after the game.
I had to call Bron, and tell him, I apologize for being that young player that wanted to everything at his fingertips. I wanted to be the guy that led us to championship. I wanted to be the leader. I wanted to be all that, and the responsibility of being the best player in the world and leading a team is something that's not meant for many people.
Kind of a shocking admission, maybe a rare admission from an athlete in the middle of something. Ramona, what are you hearing from Kyrie Irving there, and does it qualify as maturation for you or what?
Okay, I'll give him that. I'll give him maturation. I'll give him maturation as a media person as well, in the sense that was some great PR work there, right? And we're not talking about his blow with
You think it's cultivated? You think he's not being completely genuine?
Look, I believe he called LeBron, and LeBron, as we know from Joe Varden, was sitting with Kevin Love
that was an
out at dinner, which is amazing.
Shocking.
So he called him, and and I guess he left a message first, and then LeBron called him back, and they had a conversation, and I think that's great, and it shows maturation on his part, but it also changed the storyline, and it got us to talk about something else, and now instead of us talking about whether he can be a leader, he's acknowledging, I got some work to do, and he's also telling the young kids on his team, you've got some work to do.
So acknowledging previous faults, maybe, you think is actually something he's trying to say to his young players right now. Interesting. Woody Page, let me hear from you.
Well, Kyrie's a little late to all the parties. He's just finally figured out the earth is round, and now he's figured out that it takes more than just being the oldest guy on a team to be the leader of the team. I mean, really? He couldn't have done this 2 years ago? Be careful what you wish for. Oh, I want to be LeBron. Well, he's not, and now he's reaching out. Why in the world, in my mind, did he have to come out and say this last night? Just gather the players. They love having team meetings in Boston. It makes such a difference for the Celtics. Gather those young players and say, I'm sorry that I am ripping all over you and the coach, because LeBron's told me I don't need to be doing that if I'm going to be a leader. I think it was a PR move. You're right,
Listen
Ramona.
to you guys.
It was a PR move.
I thought reporters liked when guys opened up. I mean, Israel, you just said, wow. What are you thinking, hearing Ramona and Woody there?
I mean, there's such cynics over here. It's like you've been journalists your whole life or something. Look, when Kyrie left Cleveland, it's because he wanted to get away from LeBron, yes, and lead in a different way. He thought to himself, look, I can go take over a team and lead in a way that doesn't tick off my younger players and lead in a way that I'm not speaking down to them. And he went that whole first year in Boston not doing any individual interviews, not doing any one-on-one interviews. Why? Because he didn't want all the attention on him. He wanted the attention to be spread through his teammates and have them come up together. Now what he's realizing is leadership isn't easy, A. It's not for everybody, like he said, because anybody could take their talents and just be a part of a team and not want to lead. But third, and most important, is that everybody's not going to like you when you lead. There are going to be especially young players who don't really know what it takes to win championships are not going to like you if you lead a certain way. So he's got to work that balance. And so basically he called LeBron and said, I get it now. My bad for before. And now he's going to continue with his leadership.
Then Yates.
Yeah, number one, the only party he's most late to is the voicemail party. Who's leaving those in 2019? But I take this all at face value. He decided to call LeBron because he felt that he needed to know something. LeBron is obviously the most immediate leader to his experience, and he wanted to indicate to all of us that he's doing this for a reason, which is why they brought him to Boston in the first place, beyond his skill set. I don't have to believe that he's trying to change any sort of storyline about what's happening for the Celtics. He wants this team to be better. Yeah. And as a result, he is simply going after what he thinks is the best way to do it.
You remember 3 years ago in Cleveland, it was, I already got a dad. I don't need a dad, LeBron. I believe that was the quote basically attributed to Kyrie. And it's almost like it's a realization here that, okay, that was something I was experiencing as a young man, and now as I'm maturing a little bit, this is where I am now. Let me ask you this, Ramona. You think Kyrie is regretting leaving Cleveland?
No, I mean, Shaq and Kobe had the same kind of relationship where Kobe needed to stand on his own 2 feet. He needed to prove he could win without Shaq. And later on, they both said, oh, it was all marketing.
Yeah.
We didn't really fight. No, they really fought. Like, Shaq and Kobe actually got into fistfights. That was real. And they can say later it was all marketing and maybe try to soften some of this for their legacies. But Kyrie needed to leave. He needed to stand on his own 2 feet. I don't think any of that.
So then that's just proof that this is a human condition, at least in those 2 examples. Wouldn't you agree, Israel? How about you?
Yeah, no, I think he doesn't regret it, especially since LeBron's gone out west. Maybe if LeBron decided to, stay camp in the Eastern Conference and sort of mess up Kyrie's path to the finals, maybe he'd regret it. But no, I think he's doing what he wanted to do, which is lead a team, lead a very good team, and all the bumps in the road that come with it.
There are bumps right now. That was a win, though, against Toronto last night. Last thing. Kyrie to the Lakers. Who says no?
Nope.
Who says, you say no. Israel Gutierrez says no. Woody Page says no.
Please don't
Ramona, I'll give you the last word. No, okay.
Sports Talk Radio
so
in
everybody
LA?
says no.
Why not?
Everybody says no. We'll move on then. Nets 145, Rockets 142. 58 for James Harden. The streak continues.
Yeah.
That was him breaking 50, by the way. 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. It's not just the loss because teams lose games when they have half a roster, but it's this stat. Of the 115 points Harden scored the last 2 games, none came on an assist. None! And our researcher, Caroline Willett, she spelunked today to find out that Harden is now, for the season, at 720 direct isolations. That is more than any other NBA team. More than every other NBA team. Okay, so that's on the table. Israel, what's your takeaway from last night in Harden?
Well, Tony, go back to the 3 guys you compared it to with Kobe, Iverson, and Michael Jordan. Those guys were heavy isolation guys too, eh? And I'll give you another number to throw out there. When those guys are averaging 37, whether it was Michael, 35 for Kobe, 31 for Iverson, none of them had an effective field goal percentage as high as James Harden's is right now at 54% roughly. So that just tells you, A, of course, the three-point line helps him a lot, but B, he is as unstoppable and effective as a scorer as those other guys. It doesn't matter where you like to watch, launching parabolas or a guy launching himself to the free throw line all the time. He is an unstoppable force in this game. And again, I've said it before, in a league that has Steph Curry and Kevin Durant, if you're talking about the most unstoppable offensive force, you're talking about an otherworldly talent in James Harden.
When you asked earlier this week, Tone, whether or not it's possibly a bad thing that he's on this kind of streak, I said yes for this exact reason. He's simply exerting too much because he's the one that has to be doing it. Look, you can go out and say that he's selfish. You can go out and say that all he cares about is the streak. But there's nobody else on that team due to injury that can even put up the numbers. So for me, that's where I give him the most credit, is that he's actually pulling the weight when he has to, not just for the sake of him doing it for his own personal, stats.
Ramona Shelburne?
Yeah, I mean, they're calling up G League guys just to fill out the roster right now. No Clint Capella, no Chris Paul. Eric Gordon started off good. He got hurt again. I mean, he has to do this right now. And I think, I know for the purpose of discussion, we have to talk about scoring in the NBA and him getting to the free throw. And he was 21 to 23 from the free throw line. So a lot of those points are coming at the charity stripe. But this is an incredible streak he's on right now. He's averaging 41.2 points over his last 20 games. I think you just got to sit back and enjoy it and give the guy
Woody
credit.
Page.
Well, we have to sit back, Ramona, and enjoy it because they're not a very good basketball team now beyond him. And that's a serious problem there. I went all Clive Owen on Tony the other day about he can rest when he dies. But at some point, with getting no help whatsoever, he does need to back it off. The most important thing, if I were D'Antoni and I were the Rockets, I would say, guys, we just need to get into the playoffs. Let's get ourselves healthy for the playoffs. So what happened last year was they were healthy going into the playoffs, and then they lost Chris Paul. They need to just kind of hold serve, tread water. He needs to back off the minutes he's playing, score a little bit less, but I'm not confused about him not getting assists because nobody wants to throw him the basketball because they know they'll never get it back.
Well, I mean, it's hard to get an assist when you take about 4 steps after the ball. Let me go back to this full screen I had here. Because the question is, are you recalibrating how you feel about points, given the scoring in the league is so up? And we looked at those numbers again, all right? The Iverson, for me, is the biggest wow, because look at the scoring in that season, 95. And then Kobe did it a few years later as well. That's such a high percentage. But what do points mean now, Ramona Shelburne, in the NBA in 2019?
I mean, defense has fundamentally changed because of the way that they're calling fouls, or actually not calling fouls. And James Harden is one of the greatest players ever at drawing fouls. And so you could discount some of his scoring compared to those other all-time greats. But I just can't even keep my train of thought looking at those hats that Kobe Bryant
Okay, all right, thank you. I'm glad I distracted you enough.
To me,
But there's, yes, the hats, the mustache. I think it was Iverson from the practice rant. Yates, how about you?
I mean, we're in a different league now. We've got 10 guys on the floor at any given time that can fill it up from pretty much anywhere. If you're a fan of basketball, which involves putting the ball in the hole, to me, this is as entertaining as the NBA's ever been in terms of the rosters we see. I love it.
Headline 3, we'll move on. Bet against us. Patriots, 3-point underdogs to the Chiefs. Clinton, are the Patriots allowed to play up the underdog role?
Absolutely not. This is a 10 out of 10 on the lame sauce scale on every single level. I just don't understand this. You win Super Bowls for more than 10 years. You're talking about how nobody respects you, even though you win everything. What is the point here? This is a reasonable line from Vegas. There's 3 points. You're on the road. We all know Tom Brady's road record in the playoffs. There is nothing to get upset about here at all.
Israel Gutierrez?
Who of the last Final Four do you have the least confidence in based strictly on this year? It's going to be the New England Patriots. Why can't they be the underdog? It just worked against them last year with the Eagles, so now it's their turn to do it. Look, if they would have done it last week instead of going into that Final 8, bet against us, I get it. But right here, I totally understand it. It's not a legacy game. It's a Final Four for this season.
So you think the Patriots can play the underdog card? How about you, Woody?
Yeah.
Woe are us. Oh, the poor Patriots. We're underdogs. We get no respect. This is one of the greatest dynasties in the history of sports, and now they're going to sit here and say they try to play the undercard, the card about we're the underdogs. Give me a break here. Belichick says we'll show up. That's the attitude they should have. But for Edelman and these other players to be talking about, we're not going to go, and man, they came to Denver years ago and they lost to Peyton Manning and the Broncos, and they're still wearing that jersey, if you will, and it makes no sense. You say, Israel, that they're the worst of the 4 teams, really? No, they're not. You've got to make them always a favorite when they're this far.
Ramona Shelby.
Look, they're not the same Patriots, and it's not the same game. I mean, this is right. It's not a legacy play here. I know that this would be their 9th Super Bowl appearance in the last 18 years, but none of that matters. They're of the 4 teams. They are the least good team that we've seen all throughout the season.
Well, Woody, I'll ask you this: are you an underdog right here? Is Woody Page the all-time wins leader, the underdog going into by herself? Another question to consider, Clinton: if you have a lameness scale, is that in fact lame in its own right? Very existential question.
I think so.
Perhaps.
John Paul Sartre. Very
existential
question up the rear with 8 points, but anybody's ball game in buy or sell. Happy Boogie Eve, national panel. Here he is with Rachel Nichols.
We're the most hated team in sports, so.
You think you're the most hated team in sports?
Can you name one?
I would say that there are a lot of people in this country who love to hate the Yankees or the Cowboys.
Well, put us up there.
All right. Ramona, buy or sell the Warriors is the most hated team in sports?
No, I'm going to sell on that. I don't think people like them. They're kind of the heavy that they're too good, right? And everybody hates on them for that. But they're generally still an enjoyable team with enjoyable personalities. Who's going to go against Steve Kerr or Steph Curry? Come on.
Woody Page?
I'm selling all of this. The Patriots are the most hated team in the country. We know that. And Boogie, when did he suddenly become the spokesman for the Warriors? We're the most hated team in sports. How many games has he played for them? 0. Why don't you at least show up before you can start talking about hated?
Well, first of all, these guys live in social media, and I think in social media, you could argue this is the most hated team. I think a lot of people hate to watch the Patriots, right? And I think a lot of people watch the Warriors as well. Draymond Green, Kevin Durant, even Steph Curry, they love him, right? But they hate the fact that everybody else shoots threes because of this guy. So I think they are the most hated team in sports.
Yates.
You could argue the exact opposite. Under Armour is now a powerhouse in the Nike, versus Nike in the shoe game. Kids are shooting threes from all over the court. The scoring is up. That's what the NBA is now because people like what the Warriors bring. He's making.
Woody, you brought up Boogie being the spokesperson for this team. He hasn't played a game for them yet, though he did get a technical foul. Or prevented Kevin Durant from getting a technical foul and ejected from a game. He was the voice of reason, at least at one point in the season, which is amazing evolution of the Boogie as we know him. We'll move on. Buy or sell 2. 7 years, $175 million. The report from Buster Olney, ESPN, Bob Nightingale, USA Today. White Sox offering Manny Machado. Now we're going to break down that number, but also Dan Lozano, Machado's agent, calling out Nightingale and Olney for seemingly putting that number out there. And the reporting over the last couple of months, he called it inaccurate and reckless and wondered aloud if it was misleading to try to affect negotiations and scuttle the CBA. Woody, buy or sell?
Well, I'm buying that there was a market correction last year, unless anybody's forgotten that there were so many players that were not being signed for the kind of money they believed. It's carried over to this year. Machado and Bryce Harper are not going to get that $300 million level this year. It's just not happening. Baseball has quietly said, let's bring it back, and that's what they're facing now.
And you characterize that as market correction, not collusion, which is also a fine line some of the agents are trying to dance as well. Israel Gutierrez, how about you?
Yeah, I tend to agree with Woody there. Maybe there is collusion there, but somehow the market was corrected. I do think, though, that if you are complaining about a reporter's poor information based on unnamed sources, go ahead and give another reporter the correct information as an unnamed source and then get that information out there. This sounds like he's complaining about things that are out there that might be true.
Glenn Yates.
Yeah, and that's the point. You don't have to insult us with our intelligence. We all saw how the World Series ended with your boy getting corkscrewed to end it, and he didn't have the best series all over. There's a reason why this market is corrected, because a lot of people just don't think that Bryce and Machado are that good. Sorry to say it.
Mona Shelburne.
Yeah, maybe he's right. They didn't recklessly call him and allow him to spin them on what he wanted reported in regard to his client, right? I mean, I think they cut a little close to the truth, which is the Dodgers are not in on Manny Machado. He didn't exactly light it up here in Los Angeles. And he made a couple of quotes here that people that didn't go over well.
Would it benefit the White Sox, though?
Don't have them bidding?
Would it benefit the White Sox to have their number get out there and it being as low as possible? And even if the number comes up after, so you can understand, This is not a terrible situation for the teams. 73 days we're approaching into free agency. Neither of these guys signed. We'll move on. Buy or sell 3, Tulsa and UConn last night. Take a look.
Now Frank Haith, along with Dan Hurley, warning both coaches of the referees. Little jawing back and forth between the Tulsa and UConn coach, and Elijah Joyner waving his hand, trying to wave on the crowd.
He teed up both coaches. And Dan wants to visit with Frank to actually to shake hands, it looks like. But good. Dan Hurley.
So Hurley wanted that handshake. He didn't get it from Haith for a while until right there. Izzy, what are you buying? What are you selling?
Double technicals.
I mean, I'm buying the first technical. That was a bit embarrassing. That second technical I'm selling for a couple of reasons. First, it didn't seem like they deserved the second technical. Second, if two coaches are going to fight, go ahead and let that happen one time. I think everybody wants to see it.
Glenn Yates?
I'm buying the gap between the two of them. Once they finally got to the handshake, it was good, but I'm selling everything else. You can't let this escalate to that point if you're the referees. And if you're coaches, just go ahead and leave the court. We know what they were getting at. You didn't have to push it that far.
Shelburne?
I think they made it worse, though. I think they escalated the situation that was not really out of control.
Who was the escalator in your mind? Was it Haith or was it Hurley? Hurley refused to put the hand away. Haith refused to look at him. Woody, you have an answer there?
Yes, I'm taking coach's ejection for 6 points. I am totally defending the referees. They don't know that these guys are friends. If they want to shake hands out in the hallway, go to dinner afterward. But they wanted them to go back to the bench, and Hurley now is coming back. I hated it all.
You're not getting the 6 points, Woody. Time's up. Sometimes you don't get the handshake. You just get the point and the thumb up. Point and thumb up here. Gutierrez, Yates. You, me, you, me, you, me. Showdown next. Then back the other way. Crunking on Marc Gasol. Clinton, what should Gasol feel worse about?
To me, it's got to be the first one. I'm going to give him some level of credit for being slightly out of position and the second guy on the play for getting dunked on. That one is a little bit more forgivable.
No. It wasn't the first one. The first one wasn't even his play. He was like, oh, let me help a little bit. Oh, okay, I got dunked on. That second one, he was going in on Giannis. He thought he had a dunk on that one, and it got sent back.
You think, Clinton, Israel's making your case for you. I think Israel's making the case for a FaceTime. It was there's no harm in getting dunked on when you're the help-out defender.
Fair. So I was watching a game the other day and was asked, hey, why do they call it shooting threes from downtown? And I'm like, That's true. Why would you take college shooting from downtown? Wouldn't you think that downtown, where all the action happens, like in the paint? So I started doing some research, and the somebody is Hunter S. Thompson, blamed it on Brent Musburger, who apparently went all in on the downtown thing in the 80s. But here's what's interesting. In 2010, Hunter S. Thompson wrote for ESPN.com. Who even remembered that? Was the internet even around in 2010? It feels like so long ago. But anyway, we should stop saying from downtown. We should say some different, like suburbia or something. Why would it be downtown? It's so far away from